Have you ever wondered what would happen if the most overlooked person in a company solved the one problem no one else could? What if the quietest man in the building, armed with nothing but a mop and a tired smile, was the only one who saw the answer, staring everyone in the face? Would anyone listen, or would their own pride blind them to a miracle happening in plain sight? 3 days, 6 emergency meetings, $1 million in consulting fees, and the air inside Mercer Dynamics was as heavy as a thunderstorm that refused to break. The boardroom was an aquarium of fear and frustration. At the head of the table sat Sloan Mercer, CEO, her fingers pressed so tight against her glass water bottle that the veins on her wrist showed. Around her, the so-called best minds in tech shuffled through failed printouts, eyes red from too many sleepless nights and too much caffeine. Gavin Brooks, nobody's idea of a genius, at least not if you looked at his pay stub or the badge that read night janitor, was mopping up a streak of soda outside the boardroom doors. He worked quietly, earbuds in, gray uniform blending into the walls. Just one more invisible cog in the machine. No one noticed he was there. No one except the little girl waiting for him at home and the woman in the glass office who had built an empire by never letting anyone see her sweat. The big screen inside the boardroom glared red, a wall of failed code and digital disaster. Sloane's voice cut the silence. "You have 5 minutes to give me a solution, or I walk away from this project and take my shareholders with me. Make no mistake, if you can't fix this, Mercer Dynamics goes down in flames, and so do your careers." No one answered. No one could. Gavin's mop squeaked on the linoleum just outside. He looked up through the glass at the whiteboard covered in formulas and saw it, really saw it, the way a mechanic can hear a problem in an engine before he ever pops the hood. A weighted note in the code, circled twice in red. They were forcing a linear model on a system that begged for something non-linear, something that could learn and change shape, not just march along a straight line. He hesitated. He knew better than to get involved. But then he thought about Lena, curled up on her little mattress at home, asking if her daddy was going to be a hero today. He set his mop aside, walked into the empty boardroom, and erased one section of the board. With a red marker, he drew a sigmoid curve, switched the variables, and circled the new path. It took him less than a minute, but when he stepped back, he felt the kind of relief that only comes from following a hunch no one else would even consider. He turned to leave, but a shadow fell across the doorway. Sloan Mercer stood there, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Not angry, just analyzing. "You fixing my company's problems now, Mr. Brooks?" Her voice was calm, but he could hear the warning underneath. I wasn't trying to interfere, just saw something no one else did." She stepped forward, looked at the board, and said nothing for a long moment. Then without a word, she took out her tablet and ran the new model. 18 seconds later, her eyebrows rose. The error rate had dropped by 60%. Predictive accuracy up by nearly 20%. She looked at him, really looked for the first time, and all the ice in her voice melted just a little. "Conference room C tomorrow, 8 a.m. You'll be there." Gavin wanted to say no. He was a janitor, not a hero, but Sloan didn't wait for his answer. She just walked away, leaving him alone in the empty boardroom with his heart pounding in his chest. That night, Gavin walked home through the city lights, his mind racing faster than the cars that splashed past. When he tucked Lena into bed, she looked up at him with her mother's eyes and whispered, "Are you going to be on TV tomorrow, Daddy?" He laughed, hugged her tight, and wished for just a moment that someone out there would believe in him the way she did. By dawn, the city was already awake and angry. Gavin showered, put on the cleanest shirt he owned, and clutched Lena's good luck drawing in his pocket as he walked into Mercer Dynamics. The halls felt different, tenser, colder, like everyone knew a storm was coming, but no one knew if it would destroy them or save them. Inside the conference room, Sloan Mercer took her seat without looking at anyone. She tapped the tablet, and the red scribble Gavin had left on the board filled the main screen. "Yesterday," she began, "we almost lost $100 million. Today, one adjustment, by someone not even on this team, gave us a path forward. Some of you might feel threatened. Some of you should." The room rippled with a quiet hostility The kind that doesn't show up in words, just in the set of a jaw or the way a hand tightens around a pen. Gavin sat at the edge, unsure if he was a guest or a target. Jason Marlowe, the senior engineer, finally spoke up. "We don't even know if this will scale. Are we really going to trust janitor's doodle over the best in the business?" Sloane's eyes were cold as winter. "Run it again." They did. The model held up. The improvement was real. Gavin didn't gloat. He just sat there quietly, remembering every night he'd spent cleaning up after other people's messes and every time someone had told him he wasn't good enough. After the meeting, Sloane caught up to him by the elevators. "You see things others don't," she said quietly, as if admitting a weakness was the only way to take back her power. "Why are you really here, Mr. Brooks?" Gavin shrugged. "I needed a job, and sometimes, when you're looking down, you see things other people miss." She looked at him for a long, long moment, and then, just as the elevator doors slid shut, she almost smiled. Back at home that night, Gavin and Lena made pancakes for dinner, and she drew a new picture. Her dad standing next to a woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile, both of them holding a mop like a sword. "Is that your boss?" he asked, teasing. "No," Lena said, grinning. "That's your new friend." He wanted to argue to say that people like him didn't have friends like that, but he didn't, because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure it wasn't true. The next morning, Gavin walked into Mercer Dynamics and everything felt different. Every glance lingered a little longer. Every conversation paused a little too abruptly when he entered the room. Word travels faster than logic in a tech company, and while most people claim to love innovation, very few could stomach being outsmarted by a janitor with calloused hands and faded shoes. At first, it was subtle. Someone in the elevator looked away, pretending to read emails. In the cafeteria, two engineers stopped talking the second Gavin passed. By lunchtime, it was impossible to ignore. He was no longer invisible, but he wasn't welcome either. The only place that still felt like his was the back staircase, where he sat with a sandwich and his daughter's drawing for luck. But while others whispered, Sloane Mercer was moving. In her glass office, she was watching the company's future reshape itself, on the monitors, on the bottom line, and in the startled eyes of her board. She could feel the old order trembling, and something inside her, something that had long been trained to value control above all, began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the right kind of chaos could be a gift. It didn't take long for the pushback to start. That afternoon, the CFO requested a clarification on why a janitor's algorithm was being considered for a global rollout. Jason Marlowe, red-faced and rattled, sent out a thinly veiled email about standards and professional boundaries. Even HR weighed in, reminding Sloane of company optics and stakeholder confidence. The subtext was clear. "You don't let the help touch the crown jewels." Sloane's reply was as short as it was sharp. "If anyone else had solved this, you'd be promoting them. Instead, you're scared because genius showed up where you didn't expect it. Get used to disappointment." Meanwhile, Gavin tried to keep his head down. He stuck to his cleaning route, fixed the broken soap dispenser on the fourth floor, replaced a flickering bulb in the server room. But everywhere he went, there was an edge in the air. Resentment, envy, a silent question in every set jaw. Who does he think he is? For Lena, it was just another Tuesday night. She greeted him at the door with a hug that erased the worst of his day, and together they made space tacos. Really just tortillas with cheese and whatever leftovers he could find. While she quizzed him on math facts and told stories about imaginary dragons who learned to code. Later, when she was asleep, Gavin sat by the window, looking out over the city lights, wondering if he'd made a mistake, if being noticed was worth the price of being resented. But the world outside didn't slow down. At Mercer Dynamics, the board called an emergency meeting, worried that news of the janitor's solution would reach the press. Sloane showed up in a navy suit, her eyes fierce and clear, and shut down every attempt to backtrack. "If this company is so fragile that a janitor's good idea can topple it," she said, "then maybe it's time we let it fall and rebuild something better." Later that week, she called Gavin into her office for the first time. Not at night, not by accident, but in broad daylight, in front of everyone. The room was sharp with tension as he entered. "Sit down," Sloane said, motioning to the chair across from her. He did, nerves jangling. "You look tired," she observed. "I haven't slept much," he admitted. "Neither have I," she said. For a moment, the mask slipped, and Gavin saw the woman beneath the CEO, the one who carried her company like a shield, who hadn't had a real friend in years. "They want to push you out," she said quietly, "but I'm not letting them. You saved this company. That matters more than what's written on your badge." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. She pushed a contract across the table. "This is an offer. Temporary technical consultant, project lead on your algorithm, full access to resources. Take it and you'll have the power to build this yourself. Turn it down and you can keep your mop and your peace. I won't blame you either way." Gavin looked at the paper. The numbers were more than he'd ever seen in his life. "What if I say yes and they still hate me?" he asked, voice low. Sloan looked him dead in the eye. "Then they'll have to get used to it. I'm the CEO. My job isn't to make them comfortable. It's to make this company survive." That night, Gavin sat at the tiny kitchen table in his apartment, contract in one hand, Lena's drawing in the other. The TV buzzed quietly with news of layoffs at another tech firm, and for a moment, fear rose in his chest. Was he doing the right thing, putting himself and his daughter in the line of fire for a chance most men like him never got? He remembered his late wife's words on the night Lena was born. "Promise me, Gav. Promise me you'll never teach her to shrink to fit someone else's idea of small." He'd promised. Now, as Lena slept with her arms wrapped around her stuffed bunny, he signed his name. The next morning, he handed the contract to Sloan without a word. She took it, nodded, and something like pride flickered in her eyes. From that day on, everything changed. Gavin was given a badge that read Lead Technical Consultant. He traded his mop for a laptop, his cart for a corner desk. But the stares didn't stop. At every meeting there was a challenge, a test, a veiled slight. Jason and the old guard tried to catch him out, to trip him up. But Gavin was steady, patient, a man who had learned resilience in hospital waiting rooms, who had made a science of being underestimated. He didn't try to impress them. He spoke plainly, explaining neural logic in metaphors even the marketing interns could understand. "It's like raising a kid on your own," he said once, and the room actually laughed. Not at him, but with him, the laugh of people who recognize themselves in someone else's story. Of course, progress breeds resentment. The higher Gavin rose, the more the old order tried to hold him back. At the monthly strategy review, a board member questioned the risk of publicizing Gavin's work, worried that the company's reputation would suffer if word got out that a janitor had saved the day. This time, Sloan didn't let it slide. She stood up, stared the man down, and said, "If your ego can't survive the truth, you're welcome to resign." In that moment, something shifted. People stopped seeing Gavin as an embarrassment and started seeing him as a symbol of change, of hope, of the possibility that anyone, from anywhere, could matter if they were brave enough to show up. At home, things were simpler. Gavin and Lena played games, built robots from cereal boxes, and invented new worlds where anyone could be a hero if they tried hard enough. But for Gavin, the real world was finally starting to feel like it had room for people like him. And for me, watching a story like this unfold, it's impossible not to feel something shift inside. The world loves to measure worth in titles and degrees, but sometimes it's the janitor with tired eyes and a stubborn heart who rewrites all the rules. That's the part that gets me every time. Rumors spread quickly in the digital age, and the story of a janitor who cracked a $100 million code became a quiet storm that Mercer Dynamics couldn't contain. At first, it was a headline on a niche tech blog. The night janitor who outsmarted Silicon Valley. Then a thread exploded on social media, complete with wild speculation and blurry photos of Gavin at his new desk. "Is this for real?" people wrote. "Did a janitor just save AI?" By the time CNN called for a comment, the pressure on Sloan Mercer had reached boiling point. Investors demanded answers. PR teams scrambled to spin the narrative. The board called another emergency session. In a glass-walled room thick with tension, Jason Marlowe slammed a stack of press clippings on the table. "This is getting out of hand. We need a statement, something to calm the markets. We can't let people think a janitor fixed what 20 PhDs couldn't." Sloan didn't blink. We don't hide the truth here. The story is what it is. Our janitor became our lead. If that bothers you, maybe you're in the wrong line of work. Gavin watched all this unfold with a sense of disbelief. One week he was invisible, mopping up coffee stains, fixing loose wires in the server closet. The next he was a headline, a lightning rod for both praise and backlash. Some engineers reached out quietly to say thank you. Others ignored him. Jason, most of all, seemed personally wounded, as if the universe had made a clerical error and Gavin was living proof. And through it all, Gavin just kept showing up. He wrote code, he taught interns, he ate lunch with Lena in the park when the weather was good and explained to her, as gently as he could, that not everyone who smiled was a friend and not everyone who frowned was an enemy. Things came to a head on a Thursday. Gavin was pulled into a conference room, this time not by Sloan, but by a senior board member in the legal team. The mood was frosty. "We need to talk about your employment history," the lawyer said, her voice clipped. "There are questions about your credentials, about how you ended up here, about whether you misrepresented yourself." Gavin's pulse hammered in his ears. "I never lied," he said quietly. "I left MIT to take care of my daughter. I took a job I could get, any job, so I could be there for her. I'm not ashamed of that." The board member, a man with a haircut that cost more than Gavin's monthly rent, leaned forward. "We appreciate your contributions, but we can't let sentiment override process. The optics are damaging." Gavin wanted to laugh. "Is it damaging to save the company, or damaging to admit you didn't notice the answer because you didn't like where it came from?" The room fell silent. Then Sloan walked in, eyes blazing. "Enough. You're looking for a reason to go backwards because you're afraid of moving forward. Gavin Brooks is the reason we're still in business. He's the reason our AI works. If you want to fire someone, fire me first." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the legal team quietly gathered their folders and left. Sloan turned to Gavin. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. Change scares people. That's not your fault." But the attack didn't end there. That night, an anonymous email leaked confidential details about Gavin's past, his mother's addiction, his teenage arrests, his academic leave. The story went viral, and with it came the worst kind of attention, the kind that stains everything, even the good. Gavin felt the weight of shame for the first time in years, not for what he'd done, but for what he couldn't change. At home, Lena tried to make him laugh, drawing silly faces on his notebooks, making up stories about a superhero janitor who could fly. "People are just scared of new things, Daddy," she said quietly, wise beyond her years. "You always say the bravest person in the room is the one who shows up anyway." He hugged her tightly, blinking back tears. "You're right, sunshine. We show up anyway." The next morning, the building felt different. Some people avoided his gaze. Others offered awkward apologies. But as Gavin walked through the lobby, he saw something he hadn't expected. A line of Mercer engineers, all wearing hand-drawn stickers, tiny lightning bolts, the same one Lena had put on his old mop. "We've got your back," one said quietly. "The math wins." Wordless, Gavin just nodded. For the first time, he felt less alone. That afternoon, Sloan called an all-hands meeting. No agenda, no scripts, just the truth. She stepped onto the stage, the weight of the company on her shoulders, and spoke plainly. "Innovation doesn't come from comfort. It comes from letting the best ideas rise, no matter where they start. Gavin Brooks is living proof, and if you can't accept that, you're holding us all back." She paused, searching the room for any sign of dissent. There was none. Then she did something no one expected. She called Gavin to the stage in front of the whole company and handed him a small velvet box. Inside was a custom badge, Chief Systems Architect. Not a consultant, not a project lead, the leader. Gavin stared at it, stunned. "I don't know what to say," he managed. Sloan smiled, a real, weary, proud smile. "Say you'll keep showing up. Say you'll keep reminding us what matters." He nodded, voice choked. "I promise. And I'll never forget where I started." The crowd broke into applause. Real applause, not the polite kind. Jason Marlowe, standing at the back, gave the briefest, most grudging nod. And Lena, beaming from the front row, clapped loudest of all. That night, Gavin and Sloan sat together on the rooftop, city lights flickering around them, a mug of bad coffee between them. You know, Sloan said, they're already calling this the Mercer miracle, some overnight success. Gavin laughed. Overnight, huh? Try 36 years and a lot of mopping. They fell silent, letting the city hum fill the spaces between words. Sloan looked at him, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. I almost missed you, you know. I almost let all this go because I was afraid of what people would think. Gavin looked at her, heart wide open. We both could have missed it. But here we are, she smiled. Here we are. And for me telling this story, there's something about it I can't shake. The idea that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to solve the unsolvable, but to refuse to be erased, to keep showing up, to keep telling your truth, no matter who tries to silence you. That's the real heart of it all. The miracle isn't the code, or the money, or the title. It's a single dad, a mop, a daughter's hope, and the courage to be seen. That's what changes everything. If you're still here, thank you for listening. Wherever you are, whatever you're facing, may you always have the courage to show up. And if this story hit home, leave a comment, share your own, and never underestimate what quiet hope can do in a noisy world.